This is Joe Morse. You are listening to the History of Aviation podcast with Derrick, Beeler, David Rowe, and David Gorman.
All right, welcome everybody in the History of Aviation podcast for this episode 18. We've got a great plane to talk about today. I'm joined, as always, by two great guys. Airplane enthusiast, plane spotter, graphic designer, Mr. David Rowe. How's it going?
It's going really well. A bit of a rocking intro there. I like that.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Yeah. Good here. Glad to be here. Looking forward to talking about this aircraft. And it's been an interesting week. We've had a lot of rain and a lot of bad weather, so not much aviation related to discuss because there hasn't been any. Too much rain. The best part is my daughter's home from college. She made straight A's this first semester, or actually first year, and she's going to England next week. So we're going to lose her for a couple of weeks while she does a little bit more world traveling. So just getting her ready for that.
Middle school science teacher, airplane enthusiast, spotter, Mr. Dave Gorman. How's it going, Dave?
Hey, Derrick, David, how we doing, guys? I'm
Wonderful.
doing well.
Wonderful.
Yeah, awesome. It is great to be back here on the History of Aviation podcast for our chat one more time. Things are going well, having a good week. It's a good week because it's going to be a short week. I'm going to play hooky for a day and a half from school this week. Go see one of my favorite bands that you've never heard of in Nashville tomorrow night called the Hoodoo Gurus. Told you.
I know who they are. You didn't get me on that one.
I'm glad. I last saw them in 1989, so I've been waiting a while, but they don't get over here from Australia very often. I wish I were going to go see an air show this weekend too, but that's coming up soon enough, hopefully in Smyrna. But things are going good, having a good week, and looking forward to talking airplanes for that. We got a great one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle. This one is a beautiful aircraft, sleek, swift, and deadly. Is a good way to describe it. Really kind of owns the skies. It's a twin engine, all weather tactical fighter, and has been a dominant player for going on 50 years now.
That part is, again, just amazing that this aircraft has been around actually longer than 50 years since it was being developed, isn't it? It still looks sleek and fast and modern. It's been upgraded. It's got, obviously avionics and all the bells and whistles you could possibly imagine. It was a badass in the early 70s, and it remains so today. You would not want to be being a bad guy up there and seeing this thing coming up after you. I think you should just get down immediately if that were coming up on your six or anywhere, because it doesn't have to approach from behind to get you.
Well, that's what I was going to say. This one was sort of the plane that was the beyond visual range originator. I mean, this plane was one of the first that the radar was capable of seeing the aircraft before the pilot saw the aircraft. It had like a look down, shoot down radar. So you would look out in the distance, pick out your target, and if they didn't respond appropriately, you just launched a missile at them, and they were probably not going to make it home. So pretty incredible radar on this aircraft.
And it comes at a time when we were learning the hard way some valuable and deadly lessons about air-to-air combat in Vietnam. We had prepared for war with aircraft that were equipped with missiles and left guns off and suffered greatly as a result. And so there were a lot of different ideas about what the next generation fighter was going to need to have and how it was going to, what kind of power and speed and maneuverability and obviously weaponry as well. And this plane came out of many, many years of studies and research and testing, and frankly, a lot of arguing and inter-service rivalries about what was going to come up next. There were people like McNamara who were saying they need to have one plane that can do it all. And, that was, I guess, a dream that he had. And looking at the F-111, it was going to be a Navy, Air Force, Marine fighter plane. And that didn't happen, of course. This plane came out of huge necessity. And as I say, necessity being the mother of invention. They designed a winner, and McDonnell Douglas, now Boeing, this is plane with an incredible legacy of air combat and dominance of the skies.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The one of the things that also made this plane developed was it was sort of a Cold War response to what the Russians were doing, because they had developed this MiG-25 Foxbat, and for about 10 years it was unknown exactly what it was. They suspected it was a Mach 3 capable aircraft, could get up to about 68,000 feet ceiling. And so that was one of the driving factors for, we need a fighter that's capable of matching up to this new MiG-25. And so they put out an FX competition in 1968. And there were 4 companies that were involved. It was Fairchild Republic, North American Rockwell, McDonnell Douglas, and General Dynamics. And out of that group, McDonnell Douglas had the winning design, which was the F-15. And it took them 30 months from the time they won the competition till it flew. So, I mean, they wasted no time, and they put this plane together, and they actually built a real winner. It was built around this idea of energy and maneuverability. So they've got very light wing loading. You've got really big wings, so light wing loading, and you've got 2 of the most powerful jet engines that they could fit into it. So that makes it, real stable and really fast. So you can turn and twist, maneuverable. So it's literally about the fastest jet in the U.S. Air Force inventory.
Well, it certainly has proven itself over and over, not just in the U.S., but as I know we'll talk also with the Israeli Air Force too. While I was doing a little bit of research on this, I saw the name John Boyd come up, and I don't know if you'd heard of him before. I really didn't, and I bought a book on tape that had Boyd in the title, and it turns out it was a different one that I was thinking he was. But I listened to the book because he was a fighter pilot and a huge influencer. The energy maneuverability theory that led to the development of this plane and others in the 60s and 70s, just pushing and demanding that aircraft could fly and maneuver and be able to survive, and finding new ways of fighting air to air against an enemy. And that, we were learning lessons in Vietnam, and he was pushing hard to take what we learned and make sure it shows up in the next generation fighter planes. And as a result, here we are. And for 50 years, this design, I'm not sure that the Air Force has improved on it yet. I mean, I know they love the F-22, and obviously the capabilities are different, and it can do great things in the F-35, but there's still an incredibly important role for the F-15 and the Strike Eagle as well, of course.
Yeah, exactly. As a matter of fact, I saw a couple of videos from some F-15 pilots. One was for this new F-15 XE version, or EX, I'm sorry, F-15 EX, and one that was against it. So basically it was, one guy is for continuing the 4th generation fighters that the F-15 is a part of, and continually upgrading it. And the other guy was arguing that no, we need to drop them and go with the F-35 5th generation. So there's still some squabbling going on about which is the better direction to go. But I think the platform itself of the F-15, it just lends itself. It's so versatile to advancement, and they're just going to keep developing it, and it literally is going to be around for maybe another 30 or 40 years.
Well, you mentioned about the radar system, the incredible ability to target aircraft that aren't in visual range or anything like that, and being able to stand off and engage from a distance. But they put a heck of a gun on this plane too. Again, coming out of Vietnam and realizing you need to have a stable gun platform, and this plane was designed with one. That M61 Vulcan Gatling gun cannon is certainly distinguished itself in many different makes and models, but incredible fighting weapon this thing is.
Yeah, absolutely. 6,000 rounds a minute, 100 rounds a second. I mean, that's hard to grasp, but that puts a lot of lead on a target in a short amount of time. So yeah, it was incorporated in because that was the lesson that they learned. And, along with the other, I believe the aircraft has 9 hard points. So you've got 2 under each wing, 4 on the fuselage, and a center line. So, the Sidewinders, Sparrows, Gatling gun. I mean, it's a pretty lethal aircraft when it gets up there. So when you're tangling with it, you've got something that's tough to beat.
Yeah, you better have an answer, or you better have an afterburner because it's got to get bad really quick.
Well, even with the afterburner, this thing flies 2.5 Mach. There's not too many aircraft that do 2.5. So, I mean, other than the Foxbat, which is a 3, can do Mach 3, not too many are going to outrun this plane.
Yeah, it's 1,600 miles an hour or thereabouts.
Yeah,
incredible.
Exactly.
It's interesting. You're talking about the Foxbat, and of course, one of the planes I enjoy is the XB-70 Valkyrie, and the Foxbat was designed to get up to 70,000 feet and Mach 3 to knock it down, and then based on the Foxbat, the needs that the U.S. suddenly had to combat the Foxbat led to the development of this plane. So there's a lot of catching up, and sometimes you have these incredible advances in technology, and then things happen. I remember, I'm old enough to remember when a MiG-25, I think his name was Viktor Belenko. He was a Russian pilot, and he defected in his MiG-25 to Japan in maybe 1975 or 6. And, it was an incredible intelligence coup. And the U.S. now had the ability to crawl all over it and check out to see what its capabilities were, which the F-15 was coming online and I guess it was starting to be deployed by that time. But it helped us understand just what that thing was capable of. And I mean, it wasn't sustained Mach 3, but it could reach it. And it was an adversary that had to be accounted for. But the F-15 just kept getting better and better and better. So,
well, talking about the Foxbat, it's deficient. It's literally an interceptor. It's not an air superiority fighter that the F-15 is. So the Foxbat can only do about 4.5 Gs in a turn, whereas the F-15 can go up to 9. It also only had a combat radius of about 300 nautical miles. And that's because it was so big and full of fuel and burned fuel so fast. It literally just, it would just go up, make an attack, and then have to come back. It was not something that could hang around and, do another mission. It was literally up and back, and we're done.
I know when I first started seeing F-15s at air shows, I had trouble keeping them in my mind. Is that a Tomcat or is that an Eagle? Because they do share some physical structure similarities with the twin tails and the intakes that are mounted kind of right behind the cockpit and everything. I don't know that they ever went head to head with each other in any type of official, scud running or anything like that. But I have to imagine that there are some stories of F-15s and F-14s. Just let's see what you got there, boys. Running up against each other and chasing each other through the skies.
Oh, absolutely. There's somebody knows a story. It's just not public. So maybe a book one day will give us that story. So that would be a fun one to read.
So we have some F-15s not too far from here, right? Over in North Carolina.
Yeah, well, actually I looked that up. There is actually one at Arnold Air Force Base in Manchester, Tennessee, which is down between Nashville and Chattanooga. So
there's one on display there,
yes.
right? I was thinking
Yeah.
more about the active squadrons, though.
Oh,
We
yeah.
have over in Seymour Johnson.
Seymour Johnson. Yeah, they are active duty. So yeah, if you want to see one actually working, Seymour Johnson's the place to go.
But I have seen the one you're talking about over at Arnold in the Tullahoma area, and it is strange to see a plane like that parked on display because it still looks fast and sleek and modern, and like it still should be up in the sky.
Well, if you look behind me on my screen, I have this is the Warner Robins F-15 that's on a stick that's outside the gate to their Air Force base. So, if you want to go down into Georgia, there's one there that you can see. Actually, they've got one or two in their museum as well. So there's, I think I counted up about 30 or 40 F-15s on display. So there's plenty of them out there to see.
And retired and
right. Mostly A's and B models.
Now, I occasionally, like a lot of plane enthusiasts or nuts, I'll look at the satellite views over at Davis-Monthan out at the boneyard, and was surprised a couple of years ago to see rows of F-15s that were sitting out there that had been retired. And they're being maintained, but they're slowly being broken down or sent off to museums. So I'm grateful that so many survive, but it's amazing how the progress of time moves on and leaves some things in the past. But again, this is still a frontline aircraft, and a lot of guard units fly these guys. I see down in Louisiana from time to time the Bayou Militia out of Louisiana flying F-15s, which are always welcome sights at air shows. And combat air patrol over Mardi Gras is kind of a funny thing, but I've seen them flying over downtown New Orleans sometimes too.
As a matter of fact, about a month ago, I was out chasing a P-8 that was doing touch and goes at my local airport here, Tri-Cities Airport, and shot some pictures of it flying over, and was just standing there. And all of a sudden I hear that roar that's, unmistakably of a military jet aircraft. And I look up and there's two F-15s flying over, probably about 30,000 feet, snapped a couple of pictures. So they're out and about. You can see them, today. They're out there working.
Absolutely are. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the dimensions, some of the statistics of this aircraft. Those twin tails are up about 18 feet high, I think I was reading.
I think
what's
that's
the
correct,
wingspan?
yes.
This is not a swing wing like the Tomcat. This is a fixed wing, of course.
I do not have the actual dimensions. So if you've got them,
let's see here. I checked some of those. Okay, so wingspan almost 43 feet, 42.8 feet, 63, almost 64 feet long. Takeoff weight maximum for the C&D models is 68,000 pounds. Maximum takeoff weight. Fuel capacity of 36,000. But yeah, that speed. Now I read earlier 1,600. Here's another report that says over 1,800. Whatever it is getting up and going.
Well, and not only can it get up and go, but you can put conformal tanks and a drop tank underneath it, and you can push this thing out to about 3,500 nautical miles. So, I mean, it can go a long distance on fuel.
Yeah. Goodness, get across the Atlantic if it had to.
Right. Well, and it's air refuelable too. So,
of course,
they can take it pretty much anywhere in the world they need it to go.
We mentioned briefly earlier about some of its service with some other air forces around the world, and most of the air-to-air kills in this aircraft were Israeli. Is that right?
Correct. And that I didn't really realize that they have over 60 kills in the F-15. So yeah, the Israelis really kind of perfected how to use the F-15 in combat. The very first kill was in 1979 by a pilot by the name of Moshe Melnick. He shot down a Jordanian MiG-25. And this was something I was listening to him talk about it. And they actually use an Israeli missile to shoot it down called the Python 3. And they have a nickname for it. They called it the God Forbid, as in God forbid you encounter this missile, because it's what shot down the very first aircraft for the F-15. So the Israelis, they know how to use those aircraft.
Man. And you said over 60 air-to-air kills?
Correct. Actually, the total for the F-15, which is pretty impressive, is 104 to none. It has never been defeated in combat.
Man. And as you mentioned, this is a fourth generation fighter, right?
That is correct. Yes. Although with this new F-15EX, I mean, from what I was reading with the radar upgrades and the electronics and avionics and an all new cockpit with colored screens, and I mean, it's not stealth, but the guts of it are literally right there with the fifth generation fighters.
One of the first times I remember seeing one of these on display was up at the Air Force Museum, the F-15 that they call the Streak Eagle. And
yes.
Most of us have heard about this incredible plane that was specially made, and it was, I guess, stripped of paint and extra weight and things like that. It was just built for speed. And it set some incredible records of time to climb and it's like 98,000 feet in just over 3 minutes or something crazy like that. Just really, really moving to the sky. And then it was on display. And I remember looking at that thing and thinking, man, its days can't be over. This thing is, it's beautiful. But I know that just recently, in the last month or so, the Air Force Museum has added, I believe, another F-15. Did you hear that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I watched the video of it flying and landing on the runway next to the museum. So, yeah, they've added another one to their inventory.
And if I understand, they'll keep it in the colors that it's in, right?
I believe that's what I read as well, yes.
Yeah,
so let me tell you a quick little story about that time to climb record. It was done as to kind of show up the Russians, because their MiG-25 owned several of the records. So the F-15 ended up breaking 8 time to climb records, 3 that were held by the MiG-25, and the F-15 was able to beat the Foxbat by 25% on all the records. So really fast. So the way it worked was they would take off, pull 4 Gs into a 60-degree climb, accelerate to 2 times the speed of sound, and would reach the altitude of 98,425 feet in 3 minutes, 27.8 seconds from brake release. So literally from the ground at a dead stop to 98,000 feet in 3.5 minutes. They actually got to 103,000 feet because they're going uphill, so they had to slow down before they started descending. So this is a neat fact that I discovered about it. So on its climb to 98,000 feet, you all have heard of the Saturn V rocket?
Of course.
The one that took the Apollo astronauts to the moon. The F-15 beat the Saturn V to 50,000 feet by 10 seconds.
Wow.
That's how fast that Streak Eagle was going. And the pilot must have some really big cojones, because my goodness, that's fast.
Definitely.
Goodness. Now, that one was specially modified for speed, of course, but the ones behind us on our own screensavers, these guys all have more thrust and weight as well, right?
Yes.
So you don't have to be specially modified to move at 1,600 miles an hour plus.
No, not at all.
It's incredible.
This is a fast aircraft, just in its natural state. Just, military configuration, it's still faster than just about everything out there.
Well, it is a real brute force aircraft, lots and lots of engine power. One of the stories that I was reminded about before the show was about an Israeli F-15 that I think was in a mid-air collision, and it lost part of its wing. And the guy landed. The guy was able to,
Wow.
figure out just exactly how he had to power the plane and the angle of attack and roll and everything, and just being able to accommodate the aircraft with this missing section of his wing, and he landed. But the thing that I could not find anywhere was, I remember very well back in about the 1994, there were a pair of F-14s that were over the Smoky Mountains doing maneuvers. There are places out there that are military lanes for air-to-air combat training, sorties and things like that. And these guys collided. And an F-15 came back to McGee-Tyson missing part of its outer wing. And the guy landed. And it sat out there. I saw it from a distance. Did not have a good camera. I could already hear Bruce laughing at me like, pictures or it didn't happen. Bruce,
Yeah,
I'm telling you, I saw it. But, it definitely shed a portion of its wing. And if any of our listeners have any information about that, McGee-Tyson Airport in Knoxville, Tennessee, in the mid or early 90s, to confirm that for us, that would be great, because I know it happened. There are pictures. There was a picture in the News Sentinel, and I've looked in their archives and cannot find it. But again, and that's not a lot of aircraft that are going to bring you home like that, but this one certainly did.
Oh yeah, that's pretty amazing. I think a lot of that has to do with the power of the engines, just brute force pushing the jet through the air, and the fact that it's a flat bottom. It's sort of a wing all the way across. It's not like your traditional aircraft with a big round tube in the middle. It's a wing from end to end. So yeah, the pilot was incredibly lucky, and that's a amazing story that is true.
I think it's a pilot that's incredibly well trained. That their instinct was to see if they could fly it instead of immediately just bail it out. And I don't remember. I think that the Israeli one may have happened first. So maybe this pilot knew about it and thought, well, let me see if I can bring this sucker back. And it was still flying, and he wasn't losing any crucial liquids at that point. So I guess he felt like he could bring it in, and he did. And as far as I know, it got repaired and probably got crated up in a C5 or something and taken away to be repaired, or maybe it ended up at the boneyard. But I got to find that. I got to find confirmation of that crazy story.
Yeah, that's definitely one we need to figure something out on. The one in Israel happened in 1983, so it was considerably earlier.
Sure was.
Yeah. Here's another interesting story about the F-15. Did you know that an F-15 shot down a satellite?
I do remember that. I remember that was a technology demonstration, I think, right? Just to see if it could be done.
Yeah, that was back again, Cold War. We're jockeying with the Soviets about who can control what, and so yeah, we put a missile underneath a F-15, and a Major Doug Pearson flew it up to 30,000 feet, fired it off, and sure enough, it went up and hit an old satellite and knocked it out of orbit. So that's pretty amazing capability. It's the only satellite that's ever been shot down from an airplane like that. With the Cold War, I think that kind of went to the side because we didn't want to militarize space too much. But still, pretty amazing story that shot down a satellite.
Well, what was the name of that pilot?
Wilbur Doug Pearson.
I hope Pearson was able to put a satellite silhouette on the side of his F-15 after that.
Right.
That would be cool. Yes.
I'm sure there's a story about that as well. So crew chief would have been very proud. I'm sure he would have hooked him right up on that.
Well, I also have a story about an F-15 shooting down a helicopter, but not with a gun or a missile. Shot it down with a guided bomb. In 1991, an F-15 was on patrol, and an AWACS directed it to a M24 Hind gunship that was operating near some special forces on a mission, and told the F-15 to take it out. And he could not get a missile lock on it, so he used a 2,000-pound GBU-10 laser-guided bomb. And it was a direct hit, and it incinerated the Hind. So you can use a bomb to shoot down a helicopter, apparently.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, that was one I'd never heard of. I was like, really? That's just amazing. Amazing. So another thing, do you remember when the F-15 kind of exploded in the air and fell to the ground? And
that was over Missouri, wasn't it?
That's correct. They had some structural defects in them. These planes were flying so many hours, and flying at that 9G puts a lot of stress on the aircraft. And in 2007, an F-15 and a 6G turn, literally the cockpit just broke off. Luckily, the pilot ejected and survived, but they put all the F-15s under inspection and discovered that some of the upper longerons near the cockpit were failing due to years of stress and age. And so all of the A to D models were grounded until inspections were made. So these planes are tough, but they still they wear out over time.
That's a lot of stress on that fuselage. A lot of stress.
9Gs.
Yeah.
I remember watching a video that explained that accident when the plane came apart, and it was pretty terrifying. And fortunate the pilot survived, but he had no idea. He wasn't flying at 9Gs when it happened. It just came apart on him. The cumulative stresses all of a sudden caught up, and next thing he knew, he was hitting the silk.
Yeah.
So lucky to survive.
But, good training, good equipment. The ejection seat worked as it's supposed to. So, when everything goes the right way, you get a good outcome. So,
well, these guys occasionally come into McGee Tyson and stop in and spend a little time and get their pictures made, and very impressive aircraft to see. Didn't we just have one come in from a foreign country?
I don't know.
Was that an F-15 that came in that was from Qatar or Qatar?
When was it?
Oh, a month or so ago. Did a high performance takeoff? I have to check.
We need Bruce. Where's Bruce?
Oh, don't no. We're gonna edit this out, right?
Yeah, Bruce would know because he was probably there taking pictures of it.
I've seen him, but I'm thinking it was an F-15. But my gosh, the memory goes quick.
Yes,
but this is a plane that does make air show appearances, and there are some F-15s that do perform during air shows. So not just coming in and being on static, but doing flybys, touch and goes, showing some of the performance. And man, oh man, it is a powerful aircraft. And David, you mentioned hearing them flying over at 30,000 feet and snapping off a couple of pictures. Coming in at 300 feet and then hitting the burners as they pull out is quite a thrill too. You really feel it all over.
Oh, literally, you feel it in your chest because that rumble just pounds against you as they are going by. It's an impressive thing to see. The sound and the smells and the look. It's amazing. It's been a while since I've seen an F-15 demo, and would like to see one soon. Pretty amazing aircraft.
I think that this may be the first aircraft where I felt like I finally got some good pictures of an afterburner in flight, because you're always hoping to get something where you can see, the flames showing up. And when these guys take off, they power up in a hurry, and been able to get some good pictures over the years. Sometimes up at Oshkosh, they'll come in and they'll do some dusk flybys and takeoffs and things like that. And I mean, you can't help but good pictures for that, of course, because of the light and everything like that. But man, for a 50-year-old design, McDonnell Douglas knew what they were doing.
Absolutely. They flat made a great airplane. It's amazing it survived this long, but hey, there are a lot of people have used it. I was looking at my list here. Israel, Japan. Japan actually builds their own version of the F-15. Mitsubishi has got about 3 different variants of it. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, West Germany, Singapore, Korea. And one of the interesting things I noted is a lot of the aircraft that, we build goes to the UK. This one does not go to the UK. They chose the Eurofighter Typhoon. So they don't operate the F-15, which is kind of unusual because, they operate a whole lot of U.S. inventory. So that one I thought was interesting.
Man. Over 1,000 built, and still, about 200 that are in U.S. service?
That's right. I read, 200 and some. Yeah.
Yep. I did check. It was a Qatar, an F-15 that was specially designed for Qatar that came through. Had a pretty cool camouflage. And it was coming out of St. Louis, and it had some low visibility U.S. markings, but it was on its way to Qatar. It was being delivered. Stopped in here in Knoxville, and the guys went kind of crazy getting out there and letting people know and getting pictures. And when the guy took off, he did a high performance climb out of McGee Tyson, which had to be a thrill. I was hoping there'd be some video from the cockpit that got posted at some point, but maybe he was told not to do that. But what a ride.
Yeah, that's one I would pay good money to take.
Well, I'm sure Bruce and some of our other listeners will be sure to throw in a picture or two from that aircraft underneath this when it gets posted.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to see some.
As we're talking about the McDonnell Douglas F-15 here on episode 18 of the History of Aviation podcast, closing thoughts, starting with you, David Rowe.
Hey, this F-15 is special. There's just literally no other fighter like it before, and not much since has equaled up to it. Just extremely versatile. It's very deadly. Likely about the most lethal aircraft you're going to meet in the skies. Like I said, it's undefeated in combat. That's a record that pretty proud of. Yeah, very impressive. I was reading where in the U.S. Air Force plan to retire their C's and D's by 2026. But they've still got the F-15E Strike Eagles, and those are going to remain in service, for many years to come. The EX version is out there, so we could be seeing this airplane up until the 2050s, about 90 years of service. So, hats off to these Eagle drivers because they've been the king of the hill for a long time.
Yes.
Well, let's hope we never see them as drones, okay?
Yes. No, we don't want that.
No, couldn't stand not. That.
No.
Dave Gorman, closing thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking that this is an aircraft that came through design and then came online at about the same time that I was really starting to think about airplanes and pay attention. So I'm thrilled this is one of the older aircraft that is still on active duty. I feel like I kind of grew up with it, and always a thrill to see it. It's great to see them on the ground, but it's even better to see them fly. And there are plenty of them that do that. The boys over at Seymour Johnson put on I should correct myself, the crew members, because there are female F-15 pilots as well. Sorry, ladies. Put on a great show, and what a kick in the butt this thing has got to be with all that power. It's kind of like come up and get me, because this plane could do it all. So get out there and go see the one in over at Arnold Engineering. If you get a chance over to Tullahoma, or down the road in Georgia. There are a couple down there as well, up in Dayton, or look up in the sky. Maybe they'll be flying over. Incredible plane.
Know.
Yep. The Boeing F-15. Hard to get used to.
Yes, it is. Well, guys, as we close out the show here, let's talk about some social media and websites, starting with you, David Rowe.
As always, aerophile.com. Come check me out. I have got a ton of videos, photos, all kinds of stuff, aviation related. You'll find something there that you like. I'm pretty sure of it.
Good deal. Dave Gorman?
I spend more time on your page than mine sometimes, pal. It is, as he says, there's something for everybody. So Gormania is the name of my YouTube channel. It has more than just aircraft, but there's plenty of aircraft there as well. I do have a Instagram account that occasionally includes aircraft. Still working on some pictures from the air show at Thunder over Louisville a few weeks ago, and hope to add a few more to that. My Instagram is _it's Dave Gorman, and place to be. So thank you for sharing all of our socials so all of our followers can stay up to date with all of our goings on.
Definitely. And with the history of aviation, boy, do we have the socials. We have got a website. It's listed down below. We're also on Facebook. You can look us up, History of Aviation Podcast. We're on Instagram and Twitter, and we are active there. So we try to keep everything up to date and let everybody know what's coming up next and all that fun stuff. And then David Rowe does us some amazing artwork for that.
Thank you very much. I enjoy doing those.
Some great design, and it looks great. And I know there was some talk. Maybe hopefully we'll have some things that you could even wear.
Exactly.
Eventually.
Yeah.
So
we're going to eventually do some merchandising and have our logo on there, and we're building up to that. We're excitingly building up to that for sure.
Excited is the word.
Yeah. Had a wonderful time, guys.
Keep that eye up to the sky and that ear listening in, see what we can see what we can hear. And maybe it'll be an F-15 for you.
Definitely, for sure. So for Dave Gorman, David Rowe, I'm Derrick Beeler. Thanks for listening to the History of Aviation podcast.
This is Joe Morse. You are listening to the History of Aviation podcast with Derrick Beeler, David Rowe, and David Gorman.